Hello, everyone. This is Roopa Sunku, and I'm the Chief Evangelist at Touch a Life Foundation. I have today the proud privilege to introduce to you Vijji Suryadevara. Vijji has been extremely successful in my perspective and my viewpoint or my vantage point, and I want you to take the opportunity to get to know her and see what you would be able to take away from her success story or her career path or her narrative or journey, whichever way you would like to look at it. And hope we can inspire you to be that ideal, successful person in the future. So welcome, Vijji, to the show. Very happy to have you on the show with us.
Thank you so much, Roopa, for that kind introduction. I'm really looking forward to this show and also going and listening to all your other shows.
Fantastic. So let's start with what do you do today and what are the activities and the engagements that you have currently going on for yourself?
Thanks, Roopa. Unfortunately, it'll be a long answer because I'm doing many things. But fundamentally, I've been in technology field for more than 20 years. So I'm head of delivery for cognitive solutions in a smart city project. In addition to that, I'm also an entrepreneur and an angel investor. So I've done multiple companies. We can go over that. But I invest in companies. I do advising for startups. So my life really revolves around technology and startups.
Fantastic. I mean, it just gave me the shivers through my spine, seeing the myriad of things that you're doing. And more importantly, venturing out into areas that is typically seen as men spearheading much of this initiative. When you talk about angel investing, it's men. When you talk about startup entrepreneurs and technology, it's men. Really excited to hear a little bit more. So tell me, what was your academic background and how did you get into this technology space, which is definitely becoming a forte for women, but more importantly, how did you venture out into angel funding and becoming an entrepreneur and recommending or rather advising startup entrepreneurs as well?
Sure. I started off in India. I'm from South India, from a place called Vizag. Both my parents did not go to college, but they were very insistent that we do well in school and continue to do well as we went out to college. We were two girls, so that was also an unusual scenario a couple of decades ago. That said, as a young child, and I've spoken about this in other interviews that I've given, I'm a huge fan of Star Trek. And as TV came to India and I saw Star Trek, it just opened my mind. And I love the science aspect of it. I love the adventure aspect of it. I love the camaraderie. So all of those things always interested me. As a very young child, I wanted to become an astronaut, which was a very unusual thing in India for a girl out of Vizag who had nobody in science in her family. But I wrote to Professor U.R. Rao, who was the ISRO chairman at the time, out of the blue, saying, I want to be an astronaut, what should I do? And he said, you should study physics. The kind man actually wrote back to some, young person writing, some teenager or preteen actually, writing to him out of nowhere. And he was so kind to write that back. So I was always super interested in physics and I was trying to pursue that. But as I got older and, you have an opportunity to do either go towards engineering or science, I decided that I wanted to do more of science because I got into a private college in engineering. It was too expensive for my parents and I didn't want them to spend that much money. So I went on to do a bachelor's in math, physics, and computer science. And that was the very first time computer science was being taught at a bachelor level. This was late 90s. So it was very, very new at that point of time in India. And for me, the first day I sat down with computer, I was about 17 years old. The minute I worked with it and I understood what it was doing, it was pretty much love at first sight. And I made up my mind from then that that's what I would do. Computers is where I want to be. I did not know what careers were there or how much money you could make or any of that. It was just absolute love for the fact that with ones and zeros, you could encapsulate so much of human intelligence and accomplish so much. So
So
that
well
was
said.
really what drove me. And I went on to do my master's in computer applications, start my career in India as a developer. And then I went on to do other things like I mentioned before.
Awesome. So how did you move from math, physics, and computer science? I'm going to call you a geek for for the moment because I hear the passion in your narrative itself. So tell me, how did you kind of go into more of the startup, entrepreneurial business? And did engineer or a mathematician or a science grad out of your home with parents not with too much education. So how did that all happen?
Yeah, and I still am a geek, so absolutely I identify as a geek. So that's not at all a problem. But that said, the duality of what I really care about is one is tech and second is innovation slash science. That also came to me from my dad. My dad, even though he didn't go to college, he started a small scale industry in India, like a workshop, as they call it back in the day. It's a blue collar kind of work, but he tried that for a couple of years. And I love the fact that you could have your own entrepreneurship journey, allows you to kind of be your own boss, kind of produce something that's interesting. And if you're lucky enough and you're successful, you actually help other people by employing them, by providing employment. So again, as a teenager and back in college, even I used to say, someday I'll have a company of my own.
Wonderful.
And you can imagine what people used to think, this is, again, these are not common topics. And this was like 25 years ago. And so that was something that was in the back of my mind. And after I came to the US, I started as a systems programmer. So started off more on network management software for a company called Siemens, which is a telecom giant of Germany. Started that in India, then got an opportunity to work in Europe, in Germany specifically. I continued in technology space and in telecom space, but more on the application side. So I realized what was important was not just the underlying cool technology that we're building, but how is it used in a day-to-day life of our users, whether they are enterprise users or otherwise. So that became really an interesting inflection point for me. So after I moved to the US and I moved to the Bay Area, I decided at one point that, I was not happy with what I was doing. I felt that I was not being taken care of by the company that I was with. Despite the work I did and the amount of, in fact, I built out a practice for them. So I knew what I was bringing to the company in dollar value, because I was actually writing the proposals, closing the sales and all of that. But unfortunately, the company was not keeping its promises or was not taking care. So again, I always see problems as an opportunity.
Yeah.
So either I can sit there and complain or I can do something about it. And for me, it was a point where I said, okay, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to try that. And I'm not happy where I am. So let me go do that. And it was a tough choice because I had very young children. My children were 1 and 4, but my husband was very supportive. He's from Germany, and he came with a different mindset. And he said that, no, if this is what you want to do, it's fine, you should do it. And luckily that worked out very well. And we raised funding and we got acquired a few years later. So that's kind of how the journey started on entrepreneurship.
Wow, that is so fantastic. I want to highlight a couple of things that I took away from this entire conversation. I think the fact that you're very, very passionate, innovative, and wanted to make a difference. And when you got to a point where you were stuck or in a rock and a hard place kind of a situation, you made that pivot into other passions that you have. And this pivot was definitely, as you said, uncomfortable because you are stepping into territory in many facets not ready for you, or you're not ready for it. But you took that support system of your husband and made it out there. So I think those are all like very critical pieces, because things they say fall in place. No, they don't fall in place, but you actually have to orchestrate it or make it become comfortable as you make those pivots. So I think that pivot and that uncomfortableness is what made you get more and more excited and more innovative to create that situation of positive reinforcement for yourself and also become that future entrepreneur. Fantastic. And lastly, beautiful. After a few years, you were able to get acquired. And that is even more fun because now somebody else is excited about what you have built out there and believe that it can be purchased and will help set up their portfolio. Fantastic. So I've heard a lot of men in your influences and your inspirations. You talked about your dad, you talked about your husband being that support system. Do you feel at any point you need other influences that are women because they can associate to some of the scenarios? Or were you one of those women that said, there is no difference between men and women. I'll do whatever I like to do and what I drive to. So tell me a little bit about your emotional perspective on that end.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think couple of points. One is my mom is also a huge influence on me because she had to stop her education because she had to go to a high school which was far away from her village. And after a certain age, the parents weren't willing to send her in a train going to another place to go to school. So they didn't stop because they wanted to. They stopped because they had to. Both my parents didn't do that. So with my mom, she always used to say, hey, if you don't work hard and make something about yourself, you will end up like me, just washing dishes and things like that. Not to minimize the homemakers, but she felt that she did not have a choice. She did not have opportunity. And I think that is what it's all about, right? What makes you happy? Do you have an opportunity to make that choice? And so for me, I always say my mom gave me ambition. My dad gave me confidence.
Beautiful. Love that.
So both of them absolutely had influence on me. To this day, she is my biggest champion too. She always is applauding and supporting me. But that said, do I need female influences? First of all, when I was very young, because you don't understand what a career was, you just thought about jobs. You didn't think about a career when I started. Because I had no idea, right, what was out there. There was no internet when we started 20 years ago. It was just about starting. So it's not as if information was available. Nobody in my family knew anything about this space. So they could help me. So I had to kind of make choices as I went along. So I didn't necessarily look around and say, who are the women I can emulate? That wasn't necessarily the case. Neither did I have access to those kinds of opportunities where I could have a mentor who was a woman or any of that. The second aspect of it was, like you said earlier, right? Very often there are only men around you. I can't tell you the number of meetings I attend every day where I'm pretty much the only woman, especially the higher up you go in corporate ladder or in startups. You end up being one of those. So you should get very comfortable in your own skin and the value you bring to the table. And it's irrelevant in my mind, at least, whether we are women or men. We are here doing work. We are providing value. And if that value is something that the other side needs, then they will come to the table too. And I always enter a room with that perspective. I don't enter with, oh, I'm a woman, I'm an immigrant, I'm this and that. I enter with, I am somebody who is going to provide value, and this is what I bring to the table. So personally, I don't look for that. And I think if I had looked for that, that would only have become an impediment for me because I did not have anybody like that at that time. Now, that said, I don't think it has to be that way going forward. I think we should stand up for each other. I think we should enable each other. I think we should open the door and keep it open. You know, as we open our doors and we move forward, we leave it open for the people behind us. And so that's kind of how I look at it.
Absolutely. Wonderful. I actually want to bring up a couple of key differences between a career and a job with the listeners as well. So, the main difference from my perspective and some of the definitions that are out there is that job is something that you just want to make money, and it is something that you pursue because of the need. I mean, all of us need money to be able to sustain, survive, and take care of our basics. The second aspect of the job is you are putting in what you have as skills, and that's where it stops. But a career is something that you're passionate, which you want to pursue as a long term endeavor. And it's a combination of roles. And like you rightly said, does it give impact? Does it give value? Does it make you happy with what you're doing? And are you making that difference to what you dream of or what you want to achieve? So that's fantastic what you said there. And I think you're right. We right now in today's world, DEI and diversity sort of initiatives are plenty. And there are other stats for other various reasons like EOO that is trying to look at diversity in manifestation of race, gender, and so forth. But like you rightly said, that cannot become an impediment for you, but it should actually give you an opportunity to say diversity brings innovation and creativity because there are multiple perspectives of the different players in the whole horizon. So that was fantastic. That was beautiful, in fact. Okay, so tell me, how do you go ahead and address a situation where you go and say, I feel a little bit blocked out. I don't think I know how to get ahead or move ahead. As you said, you're a problem solver. So what are your toolkits or default go-tos when you are facing a difficult challenge that you want to surpass?
That's a really good question because I think a lot of people get paralyzed with fear or uncertainty. And that happens to me too. I think it's an instinctual response that all of us will have. Now, how long do we let that feeling linger is really what I've learned to control. And by nature, a very analytical person. So when I have a problem in front of me, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. So I keep turning it this way and that way, looking at it and looking at different ways of solving it. And then sometimes there is a path in front of you when you have that problem, but it's not an easy path. Again, whenever you change a job or change a career, you start a company, you move from one place to another or do things like that, it is, you are basically moving from certainty into uncertainty. And most people feel very uncomfortable. And the way they react to that uncomfortable feeling is either by avoiding that decision or making a decision to just stay where they are because it's a known space. Nothing wrong with that if you're happy that way. But if you're somewhere and you're not happy, then you have to kind of look at your options and decide what makes sense for you. And when I have those really tough choices where I'm making some choice that is extremely risky, or I feel that could, it's a risky choice versus taking another job or something like that, I always look at, will I regret 10 years from now if I don't do this?
Absolutely.
And that 10,000 foot view. In my case, it's a 10-year horizon view. Looking backwards and thinking of myself 10 years from then immediately gives me clarity that, yes, I will regret if I don't do this. And however hard it seems at that point of time, I move forward and do it. Now, each person has a different way of dealing with it. I'm not saying this is the only way or this is the right way, but this is how I perceive things. One, I try to solve the problems. Two, I don't let this uncertainty, fear, or uncertainty kind of hold me back from looking and analyzing and looking at things. And thirdly, taking risks is something I've done, and it really has helped me in my career and also in personal fulfillment. Sometimes things don't work out, but it's all right. If I don't try, I think I'll be more unhappy than if I tried and failed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A couple of failures can actually set your path to a forward motion that you can be proud of looking back in the horizon, like you said. This has just been gorgeously beautiful to have heard your whole story. And I think I was able to get out some of your deeper elements of connection to what you do today. So I'm super happy that both of us have talked. And I am sure the listeners are going to be able to draw away from very simple concepts that you shared. Risk-taking, being happy with what you do, and being that analytical problem solver to be your toolkit for your success, which is really nice sentiments that you shared with us today. So is there anything else you would like to say to the people that are trying and getting in and trying to pursue a tech career and become entrepreneurs, which is definitely a pipe dream for some and a bigger dream for others?
No, that's wonderful. Again, thank you for this opportunity. It's been really fun to talk to you and kind of go back and relive some of the memories. But in terms of some of the things you've already said, risk-taking, do not be afraid of risk. Do not be afraid of failure. 2, hard work is absolutely necessary. Don't do hard work for anybody else. Do it for yourself. Because if you're going to put in that amount of time of your life into something, then, have pride in what you do and put in the work that is required to make that successful. The third part is be curious. Always be curious. Very often young people that I meet know very well what their piece of the puzzle is, but they don't try to step back and look at what the whole thing looks like. And having that curiosity and interest in understanding how either your business works or how your industry works, and getting that broader view helps you both in the corporate career or if you want to become an entrepreneur. So I would say curiosity, hard work, and removing the fear of failure, and hence taking risks. Those are the 3 key points I would leave your audience.
Oh, beautiful. And I can relate to 2 of them very, very closely in my own career and what I connect with you on this subject. And that is hard work. I think that is key number 1. Do not make excuses for yourself, being that mom, being that wife, being that entrepreneur or the corporate worker. But nevertheless, hard work is just the basics of any success, starting a story of success, I guess, and looking holistically. Of course, the risk and everything is definitely there. But I think some of these things come very innately to women, being able to see things holistically, stepping back and looking at that big picture, and hard work. So those are just gorgeous messages. Thank you so much for spending the few minutes here. And I am sure you've inspired many young women and many people in general. For those aspiring entrepreneurs, here you go, guys. It's all about passion and risk-taking that has given Vijji the opportunity to surmount herself with different avenues and different things that she's ventured out on. I'd like to go ahead and close saying Touch a Life Foundation is hosting an event on the 19th of November at Santa Clara Center, and it's the Kindness Day event. It is free of cost, and you will have the opportunity to listen to multiple such storytellers, narratives, and successful people like Vijji that I have introduced you to today, and also get introduced to the entire framework that Touch a Life has introduced with TAL Scouts, TAL Wines, TAL Leaders, and the whole act of giving back or paving our future for society through kindness acts. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity and this platform, and definitely encourage you to come out and visit with us and register at touchalife.org and see us on the 19th of November. Thank you, Vijji. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Bye.